Okay, so here is a design I found online that I liked, and I thought, hey, my dad would probably make some pretty good use out of a coffee table. I don't think he has one, and I thought it looked simple enough, and it is pallet wood, so it should come out pretty cheap. So I decided to give it a shot. Here are a couple other photos. This looks pretty simple. I can't say I stick to this. So, anyhow, here is a free pallet that I found, and I ripped off a couple pieces of wood, as you can see laying on the right already. A lot of footprints on it, so I proceeded to take it apart with opening up the wedges with a little hatchet and then cutting off all the nails with a reciprocating saw. Laid all the pieces of wood out, get all the nails out, as you can see. So at this point, I'm pretty sure I power washed it, but I didn't take a photo of it. There it is. There's the power washing photo. So here is the power washed wood. And I decided to cut down to the smallest length. So this is me marking out the wood to make it all the same length. This also shows a tool that I made. If we back it up just a second. So this is a tool I found on a site which I'll link below, where you can rip wood. You need to clamp it into here, and this end here needs to be very straight. And you run that against your fence, and then you run one side of all your wood up against that, and then you flip it over and run the other side against the fence and the blade, and then you have a perfectly perpendicular wood to bind together to glue into a surface. Or so it should. That's the thought, at least, behind it. So this is me making sure all my cuts are the same length. It is very hard to film and do this at the same time, so a lot of these are just pictures, unfortunately. Sorry about that, but I think you can understand why I don't have a professional setup. This is what I was saying before. This is me making my first cut there, and the second cut will be this fence moved in and cut against the inside edge of where it's what you currently see. So this is me with the pieces of wood all laid out how I planned on gluing them together. The wood is all, how do I put this? The head of the nail is all on the underside. So because where the head of the nail has gone in, you see kind of a bigger indent of that area. So this is smaller indentation, and it makes it for a better surface. Another shot. So this is me kind of jumping into the legs. I wanted to match, as you can see there, the shape of the outline of some of the pieces that are already in the pallet wood. My project really revolved around making use out of the wood that I had and not necessarily sticking to a particular design. So I actually flipped it up and down a couple times as to what I had planned on doing. So here is me after I ran through the saw here. I just used a hammer to notch out this little pieces. This is actually really fun to do. Satisfying. So I did that for two pieces, and I got them close. And then I marked up with a pencil the rounded corners there that I later edged out with a jigsaw. Once again, very hard to do this and film with one hand. So that's really ugly, obviously, one-handed. But I cleaned that up, and I got some pretty good ones here. Now, at this point, the boards are all the same length, but the indentation for where the board would sit, in my mind, is all in different spots. So I ran them through not only the ends, but also the insides to get that to be equal height, because my original intention was to put the board on that. Later on, that changed. So here I bought some clamps. I did not own these previously, so this is my first time using them. I lined it all up how I thought I would, and I glued them and clamped them. I glued these to where the surface was up, and I did that so that I can see the gaps, the height difference of all the different pieces of wood, and try to line those up to where it'd be as smooth as possible before it was done drying. This is me taking out the little high spots and low spots, and at this point I realized, hey, that doesn't look so great. The surface looks good, the legs are meh, but it's just way too simple. And I felt really bad about cutting the second surface to fit inside of that. I thought it would look better if I had one that had more surface area. So here's me cutting out the pieces of wood that surround it. You'll see here in a second. This is actually a mistake. I lined that up. What this should have been is, in addition to the width of the surface, it should have been the like the depth of the wood that was going to go on each side. So I cut these, made the mistake, and I had to go back and redo that with some different wood that actually didn't match, which is unfortunate. But so this is pre-gluing, just kind of testing things out. I really like this way this wood in the front looked. This, again, was me kind of deciding through this process how I was going to do it. So this is me finding out, hey, I need to recut that to account for these two pieces of wood on the side, because it's going to cover up the end grain. So this is what I used. This is a pocket jig. I got this from Harbor Freight. Yeah, and I didn't have any footage of me using that, unfortunately, but here we go. Again, didn't have the proper tools, but I had two pieces of two long levels that I could get a good 90-degree out of. So I clamped everything together, because this really tends to move as you're screwing it in. So that is me making sure it dries at 90 degrees, because there's glue in there in addition to the screws. Clamping everything down, checking out how it looks. This is me doing the second set. I didn't measure everything perfectly the first time, so you could see that there's a hangover here, which came in useful because I could put a clamp there and prevent it from moving, but then later I had to come back and cut that off. This is me with the top on, and you can see I still haven't figured out the legs of what you see in the final. I really wanted to use these blocks you can see in the background. They had some burned in marks that I thought would design wise look pretty cool if I could utilize. So this and this are kind of two different stages. This is me thinking, okay, I'll go 18 inches from top to bottom, but then realizing, hey, I want to use those blocks, so I had to cut these short, and there they are, cut short, cleaning up the edges once again. I glued these feet together, and I only had 2, 4, 6, 7 of them, and I really needed 8. Ends up though, if you laid the two 2x4s down, you get pretty close height. So after I glued all these guys up, you can see there's the 2x4 ones. If you look at the height, changes just a hair. So I ran that through to cut. And this is actually not the proper way I did it. I ran it the other way against the fence because I needed to make sure they were the same height. So this is kind of a bad photo to show you. But here is it laid out with probably the pegs drilled in. This is me kind of marking it where I'll drill the hole on both sides. And this is me wedging the bottom and top into place, cutting off the access, like I said before, where I didn't measure properly. This is kind of just showing what I did to drill in the next couple holes. That was the screw I planned on using on top, and this smaller drill bit is to pre-drill the hole. Because the wood's so thin, I didn't want to split it. So this allowed the bulk of the screw to go in without pressing it out, but it allowed the thread to actually grip into the wood that was left over. This here was to just drill in just a hair to make sure the head was inset some, like so. So with everything clamped down, I drilled those guys in. I've got one in each corner. And there it is. And this is with 2 layers of polyurethane. And here it is in my parents' house with the dog and my dad.